Barkey J. Dog here with another movie review. Holy guacamole! Have I got a movie for you! Namely, 1987's Hiding Out. I hadn't heard of this picture before, really, but tripped across it and decided to give it a go. Man, was that a good choice! Now, you might be thinking that seeing as how this is a 1980s teen comedy rated PG-13, that we'd get to see a lovely young lady sashaying around topless. If that's what you expect from this picture, you'd be sorely disappointed. I know I was. But in spite of that little drawback, let's just get right into it. Hiding Out is the story of a stockbroker played by John Cryer, in one of the least convincing beards I've seen in some time. Anyway, he and some of his co-workers accidentally wound up passing some bonds for the mob, basically laundering their money, and the feds want them to testify against the head mobster. Naturally, some killers are hired to shut them up. One of the three gets killed, and the other refuses to testify, and that just leaves our hero under federal protection and awaiting the trial. But Cryer and the two agents guarding him leave their safe house and stupidly go out to a diner where one of the killers spots them and starts blasting, taking out one of the agents, and Cryer goes on the run. This is actually a great little action sequence. I thought it was well directed. There's some suspense. Really good. Anyway, he just barely escapes, and not trusting anyone now, he makes his way to a small town in North Carolina where his aunt and younger cousin live. Along the way, he stops at a convenience store and buys some stuff to disguise himself. He shaves off the beard and tries to dye his hair with mixed results. Literally. Gotta say, the two-toned look never took off in real life, but just totally fits in this 80s movie. So Cryer naturally does what anyone in his place would do. He walks into his cousin's high school and pretends to be a student. He takes up life as a high schooler. He stands up to an unpopular Nixon-loving teacher, earning some cool cred with the kids. He gets chosen to run for student body president, and if that weren't enough, he even gets a girlfriend. Remember, he's like 28 or 29 with a girlfriend who is going to high school. Jeez. like, did no one making this picture stop to think about how much of a problem this could be? God, 1980s. How I love you! Back when people in Hollywood were doing ocean liners full of cocaine and making us believe our dreams could come true. We were kings. The cousin who is in on the secret identity thing is the only one to call him out on how problematical this relationship is, but that's just kind of brushed off and ignored. You know. Simpler times, I guess. Well, of course, it isn't long before the killers and the feds track Cryer down, because he's made a few stupid mistakes, like using his ATM card and mailing a greeting card to his grandma, which give his location away. And it's just a matter of time before they realize he's posing as a high school student. The cast here is very good, although besides John Cryer, you'd be hard-pressed to recognize any. Nancy Fish plays the unpopular teacher. She's a character actor who's been in The Mask and a bunch of other movies. Oliver Cotton plays the killer. He might be a face you know. He has this weird Dracula hairdo here. Joy Bear, the cow on The View, appears in this somewhere. But the only really familiar face, well, to me anyway, is John Spencer, who plays one of the agents protecting Cryer. Spencer was a regular on L.A. Law and appeared in a bunch of other things. But other than him and Cryer, the cast is not all that familiar. The cousin is played by Keith Coogan. I really liked him. He actually looks like a teenager here, and he does a good job. The only sour note is a character who I believe was played by Claude Brooks. He's a black student who has to spout some of the worst dialogue, which was written to sound all hip and stuff, but it isn't convincing. Other than that, though, pretty solid acting, pretty solid directing, too. Perhaps not remarkable, but pretty solid. You couldn't make this movie today, for several reasons, besides the most obvious one. First, with cell phones and the internet and security cameras and all of that crapola people have access to today, I don't think Cryer's character would be able to keep hidden like this very well. Also, he just literally walks into a high school and poses as a student. I think today he'd be found out a lot faster by the administration. And there's no security in this school. He winds up living at the high school. His aunt, the cousin's mom, is the school nurse, so he can get the keys to the building, but you wonder why no one checks on the place. There is a janitor, but he only shows up later. And the bad guys just waltz right in, and no one challenges them. No one. They set up shop and then start blasting away during a school assembly. Don't worry, this is the 80s and no one gets hurt, but that's just another reason you couldn't make this movie today. And again, that's all besides the most obvious reason. Jesus. Oh, God. Jesus. Oh. This picture is definitely a product of its time, which, in many ways, was a better time. But Hiding Out doesn't seem to have the high-flying, flashy cachet of other movies from the 1980s aimed at teens. It's much more low-key and seems smaller than pictures like 16 Candles or Pretty in Pink or Goonies or whatever. I think that may be down to the fact that the movie has no true anthem in the soundtrack, no truly memorable original 80s song tied to it. If it had that, it might not have slipped under the pop culture radar the way it seems to have done. You know, I admittedly liked this movie way more than I thought I would. It's not perfect. It's not the best movie ever, but it does what it sets out to do. Namely, entertains. It really is a typical 80s teen comedy. And while there isn't much drama action stuff, what there is well done, too. I'm going to give it 2.5 paws up. It's not the usual title you think of when you think of this kind of 80s movie. They really work the premise well. It's on VHS, DVD, Amazon Prime, and if you're in the mood to visit a low-key high school comedy from the 1980s, definitely put this one on your list and check it out. Hello? Hollywood? You need to return to the cocaine. Yeah, seriously. Get on that.